At the family barbecue, the music was loud, the laughter was fake, and the air smelled like grilled meat and entitlement. Everyone was smiling, everyone was performing, everyone pretending this was what a happy family looked like. I stood near the buffet watching plates pile up with food that cost more than my weekly groceries, reminding myself to stay quiet, reminding myself to stay invisible. The way I always had. Then my brother's son stepped directly in front of me. He didn't bump into me. He didn't hesitate. He blocked me. A 12-year-old boy, standing guard over shrimp and lobster, with a smirk that didn't belong to a child. He looked me up and down slowly, the way he'd seen adults do it, the way he'd been taught to measure worth without money ever changing hands. Then he said, "It loud, clear, proud, double quotes. Charity cases eat last." Pause. The words didn't fall to the ground. They hovered in the air, long enough for people to hear them, long enough for people to decide what kind of people they were going to be. And they chose, they laughed. Not the kind of laugh that comes from surprise. Not the kind that comes from discomfort. The kind that comes from permission. Soft chuckles. Smirks. Nods. I looked around the circle of familiar faces. Faces I had known my entire life. Faces that had watched me grow up. Faces that had borrowed from me emotionally, financially, and silently. For years. No one corrected him. No one said that was inappropriate. No one said he was just a child. No one said stop. I looked at my brother. He heard it. He met my eyes. And he smiled. Pause. That was the moment. I understood something that took me decades to learn. This wasn't a joke. This was curriculum. This was something he'd been taught at home. Repeated casually, reinforced quietly, until cruelty felt normal and power felt deserved. My parents stood nearby, close enough to hear. Close enough to intervene. They didn't. They suddenly became very interested in the decorations. And the tablecloth. In anything except me. I didn't feel embarrassed. That surprised me. Usually, moments like this came with heat in my face, tightness in my chest, a rehearsed speech I'd never give. But this time, there was nothing, just a strange, freezing clarity. Pause. People think betrayal is loud. Explosive. They think it's shouting, slammed doors, dramatic exits. It isn't. Real betrayal is quiet. It's when people show you exactly who they are. And you finally believe them. For years, I had been making excuses for them. He didn't mean it like that. She was just stressed. They didn't realize how it sounded. I had been negotiating my dignity in small increments, hoping that if I paid enough patience, enough understanding, enough silence, one day I would be accepted as equal. Standing there, looking at a child who felt comfortable humiliating me publicly, I realized the account was empty. No more credit. No more grace. No more benefit of the doubt. I wasn't angry. I was finished. Slow breath. I reached for a plate. Then I stopped. I set it back down carefully. Deliberately, the sound of porcelain touching. Porcelain louder to me than all the laughter around us. Pause. Double quotes. Understood. I said quietly. No one responded. They didn't need to. I turned and walked away. Not fast. Not slow. Measured. Behind me. Someone laughed again. Someone always does. As I walked across the gravel, each step sounded final, like punctuation at the end of a sentence I'd been writing my entire life. My phone vibrated later that night. A message from my father. Simple. Efficient. The business needs your investment. Pause. Not an apology. Not a question. A request. No, an assumption. That no matter how I was treated, I would still show up. Still fix things. Still be useful. I stared at the screen for a long time. Years collapsed into seconds. Missed milestones. Dismissed achievements. Quiet sacrifices no one noticed because they were convenient. I typed 2 words. Never again. Long pause. The next morning, a notice was sent out. No drama. No warning. Just legal language and consequences. By midday, the laughter that had filled that backyard was gone, replaced by ringing phones, confused voices, and the first taste of fear, because they thought I was weak. They didn't realize I was patient, and patience when it ends doesn't scream. It collects. The lake house party was still being talked about the next morning. Photos were already online. Smiling faces, raised glasses, captions about legacy, success, and 40 years of hard work. No one mentioned what happened near the buffet. They never do. Asterisk, that's the thing about families like mine. Image is everything. Reality is just an inconvenience to be edited out. Asterisk, by noon, my phone was silent. No missed calls asking if I was okay. No messages checking in. Just the familiar quiet that followed every small humiliation I'd ever endured. That silence used to hurt. This time, it felt like confirmation. Asterisk, I drove back to my apartment later that day. 40 minutes from the lake house, but emotionally, it might as well have been another country. The air inside was cool and clean. No shouting. No performance. No one watching me to see what I could provide. Asterisk, this place existed because of money they didn't believe I had. Asterisk, money I'd learned to make quietly. Asterisk, people like my family assume power announces itself. They think wealth arrives loudly, dressed in designer suits, demanding attention. Real power doesn't do that. Real power stays silent and lets people underestimate it. Asterisk, for years, that's exactly what I let them do. Asterisk, they thought I was a clerk, a helper, someone who worked with numbers, in a vague, unimpressive way. Someone safe to mock because I never corrected them. Asterisk, what they didn't know was that while they were busy throwing parties and polishing titles, I was building something invisible, something lethal. 5 years earlier, Vanguard Logistics was already dying. They didn't tell the guests that. They didn't tell the investors. Asterisk. But I knew. Asterisk, the debt was suffocating. Loans stacked on loans. Fleet expansions funded by optimism instead of cash. My father had leveraged everything to keep the illusion alive, mostly so my brother could feel important sitting in a corner office he hadn't earned. Asterisk. Banks were circling, quietly, patiently. They were weeks, maybe days away from collapse. I remember the night my father finally cracked. Sitting at the dining table, glass shaking in his hand, talking about how everything he built was about to disappear, how people would laugh, how his name would be ruined. I watched him fall apart. And, even then, asterisk, even after everything, I couldn't let it happen, because that's what I had been trained to do my entire life. Asterisk, hold things together. Asterisk, absorb the pressure. Fix what others broke. So I did what I always did. I handled it. I created a shell company through my attorney. Clean. Anonymous, untouchable. Asterisk, ironclad capital. No family name. No emotional attachment. Asterisk, just capital and contracts. Asterisk, I injected $5.1 million of my own money. Paid off the toxic debt. Stabilized the fleet. Bought them time. Asterisk, in return, Ironclad took 37% equity and a silent board seat. Asterisk, they didn't ask who was behind it. Asterisk, they were too busy congratulating themselves for securing funding. They shook hands. They toasted. Asterisk, they went right back to treating me like furniture. I let them, because the most dangerous thing you can do to arrogant people is let them believe they're in control. Years passed. Asterisk, the company survived. The parties got bigger. The arrogance louder. My brother's confidence grew without his competence ever catching up. Asterisk and I stayed quiet. Until the barbecue. Until a child felt safe enough to humiliate me in public. Asterisk, that's when the dynamic broke. Asterisk, that's when I stopped protecting them from consequences they'd earned. Asterisk, that night, when my father asked for my investment, he didn't know he was already talking to his largest shareholder. Asterisk, when he assumed I would help, he didn't realize he was asking permission from someone who had already withdrawn it. Asterisk, by the time the notice went out the next morning, the machine was already in motion. Asterisk, banks froze credit. Lawyers panicked. Board members demanded answers. Asterisk, and still, they didn't think of me, not once. Asterisk, because people never look for power where they've spent years stepping on it. Asterisk, the phones started ringing. Messages escalated from casual to urgent, from confident to desperate. I didn't answer because silence, when you finally choose it, is a weapon. Asterisk, and they were about to learn exactly how expensive their laughter had been. The first call came just after noon. I watched my phone light up on the desk. My father's name. I let it ring. The second call followed 5 minutes later, then a third, then a fourth. Each vibration felt different now, not intrusive, not stressful, confirming. By the fifth call, the tone had changed. The confidence was gone. Whatever story he had been telling himself that morning was already falling apart. I still didn't answer. When people have never respected your time. The most shocking thing you can do is stop giving it away. By early afternoon, the messages started, short ones at first. Call me when you get this. We need to talk. There's an issue at the company. An issue. I almost smiled. By 2 p.m. the phone rang again. This time I answered. Alyssa. My father said, his voice tight, stretched thin like a rope about to snap. We have a situation at the company. Pause. What kind of situation? I asked calmly. A minor administrative issue, he said quickly. Too quickly. One of the investors is being difficult. Difficult. That was the word men like him used when they realized they were no longer in control. I'm busy, I said. What do you need? Silence on the line. Then a breath. We need a bridge loan, he said. Short term. Just to show liquidity. 500,000. Today. Pause. $500,000. He was asking me for money. To fight me. I leaned back in my chair. I can't do that, I said. The silence on the other end turned heavy. What do you mean you can't? He snapped. You have savings. You have that job in the city. This is the family legacy we're talking about. There it was. Legacy. A word that always meant their future, never mine. Christopher is losing his mind, he continued. If we don't fix this, his kid's future is at risk. Pause. His kids. The same child who stood in front of me and told me charity cases eat last. I don't have 500,000 to lend you, I said evenly. It was a lie. And for the first time in my life, it felt righteous. And even if I did, I continued, I wouldn't lend it to a sinking ship. His voice rose immediately. Sinking ship? He barked. How dare you? We built this company. We gave you everything. You're being selfish. Selfish. The word they always used when the supply finally cut off. Family sticks together. During a crisis, he said, we don't abandon each other. Pause. You abandoned me a long time ago, I replied quietly. You just didn't notice, because I was still useful. I ended the call. I didn't block him. I wanted him to feel the silence. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Not a call, a notification. My sister-in-law. A photo appeared on my screen. Her and my brother standing close together, faces tense but carefully composed. The kind of photo people post when they want sympathy without accountability. The caption read, hard times reveal true loyalty. Sad when people you counted on forget where they came from. Family first. Fake people last. Pause. I read it once. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel defensive. I felt validated. They weren't reflecting. They weren't apologizing. They were doubling down. They genuinely believed my purpose in life was to subsidize their lifestyle and accept the disrespect as payment. What they didn't realize was that the fake person they were insulting was the only reason they still had a company, and she had just decided to let go. The next few days blurred together in controlled chaos. My father called 7 more times. My brother showed up at my apartment building twice. I watched from the balcony as the doorman turned him away. He paced the sidewalk, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly, the confidence leaking out of him with every step. For the first time, I saw him without the armor. No title, no company card, no audience. Just a man realizing the math no longer worked. Finally. The deadline arrived. They hadn't raised the money. They couldn't. The forced sale. Clause triggered automatically. Ironclad.
Capital moved fast, ruthless, efficient, emotionless. Vanguard Logistics was sold to a private equity firm.
known for stripping companies down to bone and selling the pieces. Asterisk the deal closed. Asterisk my 37% stake was cashed out. $12.9 million. But the money wasn't the point. Asterisk. The final meeting was. Asterisk the closing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Ironclad's headquarters. Asterisk. They were told to arrive to finalize exit terms. Asterisk. They believed they were meeting anonymous investors. Asterisk. They believed they still had leverage. They were wrong. I arrived 10 minutes early. Asterisk black suit. Hair pulled back. No jewelry. No softness. Asterisk when I walked into the boardroom. They were already seated at the far end of the table. Asterisk. My father looked smaller, gray, folded in on himself. Asterisk my brother was whispering angrily to his wife. Red-faced, panicked. Asterisk my mother stared out. The window, disconnected, like her mind had already fled. The door closed behind me. They all turned. Asterisk. Elisa? My brother said, irritation bleeding through confusion. What are you doing here? This is a private meeting. Pause. Actually, I said calmly, I'm the only one who needs to be here. I walked to the head of the table, the chairman's seat, and I sat down. Silence. The kind that presses on your ears. My father swallowed. Asterisk. What is this?
He whispered. I looked at him. This, I said, is the liquidity event you asked for.
Asterisk, and in that moment, asterisk, their world began to collapse. The room didn't move. No one breathed. My father's eyes bounced between me and the man standing by the window. David. My attorney, the face they knew, the voice they trusted, the one who had always represented Ironclad Capital. Asterisk, he didn't look surprised. He looked prepared. What is this? My father whispered again, as if saying it twice might change the answer. I folded my hands on the table. This, I said evenly, is the end of the illusion. Asterisk, my mother finally turned from the window. Her face was pale, confused, searching for someone to explain this in a way that didn't shatter her understanding of the last 4 decades. Asterisk. I don't understand, she said softly. Why are you here? Pause. It was always me, I said. The words landed heavy. The $5 million that saved the company 5 years ago. I continued. Mine. The fleet upgrades. Mine. The debt that disappeared overnight while you were celebrating your business instincts. Mine. Asterisk, my brother stood up so fast his chair scraped violently against the floor. Asterisk. You're lying, he snapped. You don't have that kind of money. You work with portfolios. You're not. Asterisk. Sit down. I said, not loud, not angry. Final. He froze. Asterisk, something in my voice told him this wasn't a suggestion. Slowly he sat. I managed high-risk capital for a decade, I continued. While you were building a title, I was building a fortune. And when you needed saving, I did it anonymously, because I knew if you knew it was me, you'd never respect the money. Pause. I was right. I slid a folder across the table, expense reports, years of them. For the past week, I said, I've been conducting a forensic audit. Because the buyers required a clean transition. Asterisk, I opened the first page. Asterisk, Christopher, I said calmly. $75,000 charged to the company card for client development in CABO San Lucas. Asterisk, he stammered. That was a strategy retreat. Asterisk, there were no clients, I replied. Just you, your wife, and a 5-star resort. Pause. Embezzlement. I turned the page. A company leased luxury SUV for Morgan. She doesn't work here. Asterisk, Morgan opened her mouth. Closed it. Asterisk, $1,200 a month, I continued. For years. I turned to my father. Consulting fees paid to a shell company registered in your name. $200,000, plus the country club membership, plus the business dinners that always happened on your anniversary.
He slammed his hand on the table. I founded this company, he shouted. I'm entitled to perks.
Asterisk, you were entitled to a salary, I corrected him, not a slush fund. Silence. I closed the folder. Asterisk, the private equity firm has a clawback clause, I said. All misappropriated funds must be repaid before any equity distribution. Pause. I've done the math. Asterisk, I reached for the stack of corporate credit cards sitting in the center of the table. The symbols of their importance. Their lifestyle. Their identity, asterisk, when we deduct what you owe the company, I said, picking up my brother's platinum card. Your balance is 0. I cut it in half. The snap was sharp, final. Actually, I added, picking up my father's card, it's slightly negative, but I'll be generous. Snip. Plastic fell to the table. Asterisk, my brother stared at the pieces like a child watching something precious break. Asterisk, there's nothing? He whispered. No payout? Asterisk, there are no millions, I said. There is only the debt you accrued while pretending to be rich. His voice cracked. Morgan is going to leave me, he whispered. If I don't have money, she take Mason and go. I looked at Morgan. She didn't deny it. She didn't comfort him. She was already calculating her exit. Asterisk, my father slumped back in his chair. Suddenly ancient asterisk, you can't do this, he croaked. I'm the chairman. Asterisk, you were, I replied. Now you're a liability. Pause. This isn't personal, I added. It's just business. The words hit him harder than anything else I'd said. Because they were his asterisk, he reached for my arm. Hand shaking asterisk, please, he whispered. Just give us time. 6 months, we'll fix it. I looked at his hand. I felt nothing. Asterisk, I can't, I said quietly. Because you'd spend it pretending you were winning. I stood, gathered my files, evidence of their greed, proof of my restraint asterisk. Where are you going? My brother asked, panic rising. What do we do? You figure it out, I said. I walked to the door. Behind me, my father sobbed. Alyssa, he cried. I'm your father. I paused, didn't turn around. Asterisk, I know, I said. That's why I'm firing you. I opened the door and walked into the quiet hallway. The air was clean, asterisk 3 days later. The wire transfer hit my account asterisk $12,900,000. I didn't buy yachts. I bought peace. Asterisk a small house in the mountains. No guest room, no performance. No audience. A month later, a letter arrived, handwritten. Asterisk, I see now that you were holding us up, it said. I'm sorry. I folded it, put it away. Transaction complete. That evening I made dinner. Simple, quiet. I sat alone, no one blocking the table, no one laughing. I took the first bite. It tasted perfect. The charity case was eating first asterisk, and for the first time in my life. Asterisk, no one could take that from me.